Kyle Shanahan pulls out a trick play that requires Juwan Jennings as he's about to be blasted so hard by Jalen Carter that he earns a roughing the passer call, which is wild for a receiver, but releases a dime 40-plus yards that Christian McCaffrey has to track in the wind with a safety coming not over his shoulder, over both shoulders, and dive and catch. And it was just such a magical, audacious, outside the box moment that to me it all felt as one.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Scoop City. I'm James Palmer. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, you can comment, you can like, you can interact. We will always look at those comments. I'll even jump in there. I'll get the thumbs going, or I'll type it on the keyboard. You never know. But I'll respond to those comments. So drop them in there and tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. You agree? You disagree? Just tell us. It has been an insane, just absolutely bonkers head coaching carousel that just keeps spinning. We're up to 9. So why not cover the top storylines with somebody who's been covering this league longer than pretty much anybody? I'm not dating my good buddy and one of my best friends, Mike Silver, the senior athletic writer here, but I do want to just tell you that nobody covers games like him, and he was just at the Niners win over the defending Super Bowl champs in the Philadelphia Eagles. What's going on in both of those buildings? Silver will give us the conversations that he had, as well as he went across the Keystone State and covered that Texans drubbing of Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers. Now, Silver's been very close to Rodgers for a long time and knew kind of some things going on there, and that's why he made the trek there. So we'll break down what's next for Pittsburgh, Tomlin, and Aaron Rodgers as well. And we'll also talk about Tom Brady and the Raiders. What's next there? Brady's talked to Mike Silver. All right, now joined by the best in the business, Mike Silver joins me. I know, Mike, you've been on how much sleep have you gotten in the last couple of days? Because we're going to get to it. You were in Philly for the Niners and the Eagles. Then you went straight to Pittsburgh for the Texans and the Steelers. So where are we at in sleep right now?
Well, I finally got a little bit of sleep back in California last night, and I needed it because I got about 45 minutes from the time after filing my Aaron Rodgers column in Pittsburgh. I put my head on the pillow in the hotel room and the phone alarm went off because I had to go to the airport. Bad planning on my part, but sometimes you live this vagabond lifestyle. Back in the day, following the Grateful Dead around from time to time, we made it work in some wild circumstances. Obviously, mourning the passing of Bobby Weir on Saturday. It's been an emotional and wild run for me, but I am really happy to be back in California and a little bit rested. But I'm glad I went to both those games. They were really, really cool.
Well, that's why you're here, man. And we're going to get to the ties of that 49ers team and the Grateful Dead. And I feel like this might be, and we'll get to it. It was a brilliant story you wrote after that game. And just the ties that I think you were almost meant to be the one to write that story, man. And so let's stick, though, with the last game you covered. You mentioned you wrote the Aaron Rodgers piece. And Mike Tomlin is out. And he steps away after 19 seasons there, Silver. And did you get that sense? Because, Art Rooney talked to us today and literally said, I thought was hoping that this conversation was going to be, we're running it back again with Mike Tomlin. That wasn't the case. Did you get that sense being in the locker room? You work it better than anybody, that this was it for Mike.
Well, I think that in our, little NFL community, there's been a sense for a while now that he may want to take a break, do some TV, reboot. And so I've kind of had that sense for a while. And this cycle has just gotten so insane that, you kind of have to remind yourself, maybe we're not done. And in this case, we weren't. Yeah. Obviously, you look back to that Ravens Steelers finale, and the missed extra point and then the missed field goal. I guess Tomlin was leaving anyway. And it sounds like from Steve Bisciotti's remarks, that John Harbaugh may have been out either way anyway. Obviously, he's going to be in a great situation next year where he's choosing between suitors. Mike Tomlin, if and when he decides to get back into it, and he's a coach, so it'll probably be when, is going to be incredibly sought after. But I was, I was kind of mindful going into that game, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to go so much, that it could be the end for Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and certainly with Aaron, who I've known since he was in college and have covered all the way. I wanted to be there if it did turn out to be his last game, which it very well could. I would have hoped that it didn't end like that for him this season and possibly forever. And, it's funny because even when it got to 17-6 after the first defensive score, I've seen Aaron do so many things over the years. I'm thinking he can still do this. And it was interesting to talk to people in the locker room, Adam Thielen, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who'd been with him in Green Bay. They absolutely felt that too. They were like, oh yeah, we just, we believed the whole time. That Texans defense is a load. We can get to that. But I do think if Aaron does decide to keep playing, which I think is probably somewhat of a long shot, but if he decides to go that route, it's highly unlikely it'll be with the Steelers, even if they wanted him back, because that was more of a I'm joining Mike Tomlin signing than I'm joining the Pittsburgh Steelers signing.
Yeah, totally. I kind of want to ask you, because you've known Aaron for so long, and everybody has so many different preconceived notions or opinions or whatever they are about Aaron, and especially in Aaron's second half of his essentially career. Mike, what do you think time will do to his legacy as it continues to go? You know what I mean? As we continue to go further and further from that last game, what do you think time will do to Aaron's legacy?
I think people in the football world already know, without the passage of time, that he belongs in the conversation with the absolute greatest ever to do it.
And I know top 4, top 5-ish.
I mean, I just know this is a charged topic, and the Super Bowls obviously suck up a lot of the oxygen, and I understand it's a nuanced conversation. So I usually just say in the conversation, but first of all, Dan Marino didn't win a Super Bowl, only got to one, and I'm putting him in there. If you've seen him play football and understood, what he actually did and how good he was, I know he did not win a Super Bowl, and that's tough, but I put him in the conversation with Aaron and really with Brett. You wish they had gotten a chance to win more, but Aaron did so many epic things in postseason and significant regular season games where they had no chance, and he did things that are mind-blowing and I've never seen. There's the overall excellence and just the appreciation within the football world for his incredible talent, the arm talent, the keeping plays alive, the incredible grasp at the line of scrimmage, and the leadership. Though I know, there are a lot of rough edges around Aaron's, public comments and stances in the last few years that have freaked a lot of people out. But in those buildings, in those huddles, he is an incredible leader of those football teams. So, look, to me, Brady, because of the incredible winning, Montana to me will always be the standard of what I've experienced in my lifetime, the magic, and how it changed the game. And obviously the, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions in the 4 Super Bowls, et cetera, et cetera. I do think under today's rules, the Montanas and the Elways and the Marinos, and obviously the Unitises and the Grahams would have played into their 40s potentially and done things people can't even realize. But unfortunately for them, they lived in a world where their receivers could be grabbed, they could be pummeled legally.
Beheaded,
they just, it's just too hard to compare. And obviously, Peyton Manning is very much in the middle of that conversation to me too. But anyone who thinks Aaron is in any way below the absolute greats, we can argue who's above who and who is 1 and who is 3 and what would have happened if the rules were different. But Aaron is absolutely in that group, and I don't think we need time to pass to understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's considered, if you've done it, I've done it, to people around the league, there might not be a better thrower of the football that we've ever seen in the NFL. And I like that you brought up the point about, the perceived type of aspect of Aaron within buildings. I don't know many teammates that disliked Aaron Rodgers. One of the things that I always respected about him is when he had problems, he usually punched up. He never really said anything about anybody who was below his status within an organization. If he had a problem, it's usually he was talking about the owner or somebody above him. He never really punched down towards anybody within a building. I think players always really kind of respected that. You know LaFleur really well, Mike. You and I saw him on the sideline a few weeks ago, and Aaron had, and I think Aaron's kind of like Howard Stern, whether you like him or dislike him, when he steps in front of a microphone, everybody seems to listen. It carries weight. And he said some very strong comments about Matt LaFleur when he was, speaking, and he didn't have to, when he was speaking at the podium after what could be, and a lot of people believe, his final game. What do you think happens with Matt? Do you have any information about what's going on? People are just waiting for pen to hit paper. Like, what is the situation in Green Bay?
Okay, well, first of all, do you want to share on that sideline, that sideline interaction? Do you want to share what went down between me and Matt? Because I expressed some excitement about a topic, and he didn't seem to be quite as.
It's something that means a lot to you, right? It's a topic that means a lot to you. That you shared, and he didn't seem to be very.
Go ahead and set the scene. Tell people how that went.
Okay. We're standing on the Packers sideline before what felt like a playoff atmosphere in Denver, right, Mike? Like it was before a monster game. And you have been talking to everybody like you always do. This is how Mike works a game. It's better than anybody, like I said. And you're excited. You're jazzed about what's going on with the Cal Bears, baby. Let's go. This is big time. This is a big change that's going, a seismic shift in terms of we got a lot of good things going on with the Cal football program. And you made sure that Mike asked you how you're doing. Matt asked you how you're doing. You said, I'm doing great. I think we got a lot of things changing in Cal that are going to really benefit us. And I think we're in a really, really good spot. And Matt LaFleur responded with, Mike?
I think he said, I don't give a bleep about Cal. And that is fair. Now, I think I segued a little better than that. I think we had just seen Davis Webb, or there was some connection.
You were in a Cal mode, yes.
That got me there, but he definitely smiled and told me, especially, getting ready to coach a game against the Denver Broncos defense, et cetera. But, listen, you brought that up about Aaron, and that's interesting because I once went out there after Aaron Cromer, who was then the Bears offensive coordinator, had admitted that he had given some anonymous quotes criticizing Jay Cutler, who was the quarterback there, and it was a whole to-do. And Aaron said to me on the record when we were talking some really, really strong comments sticking up for Jay Cutler, who was his rival quarterback. Said, it is so hard to be a franchise quarterback and to do this job. You need to feel like everyone's pulling together and for that type of thing to be happening. So he did that. He once stuck up, might surprise some people because it wasn't that long ago, but he once stuck up really hard for Colin Kaepernick and the kneeling and his right to express himself. And against the criticism he was receiving in a conversation he and I had on the record. So you're right. He went out of his way not only to say nice things about Mike Tomlin, but to say that he thought it was ridiculous that Matt LaFleur is on the hot seat. And so it's one of those things, James. He's undeniably done a great job there in terms of winning a lot of games, getting them into the playoffs, the offensive scheme. And it's not easy. He took Aaron Rodgers, who had done it one way, merged his offensive system with Aaron Rodgers, and then had Jordan Love come in raw, having, sat and waited, and got it going pretty quickly with Jordan Love to a pretty good level. And you've seen when Malik Willis comes in, a guy that the rest of the NFL gave up on, Matt LaFleur can coach. And so it does seem crazy that anyone would be talking about a change. What's going on, though, is that you have essentially a new owner. They don't have an owner, but they have a president, CEO. That's Ed Policy, who I know his father really well, Carmen, who was a big part of that 49er dynasty. I know Ed. I know how aggressive he is. And anytime there's a new owner or de facto owner, you wonder about an existing head coach and the staying power. They did get into the playoffs, and Micah did get hurt in that game that we saw, but they blew a big lead in the fourth quarter to a rival. And Ed Policy had said going into the season, I'm not extending Matt LaFleur or my general manager, Brian Gutekunst. I don't like lame duck years, and they only have 2 years left, which means they only have one more after this. So that means they're either getting extended or let go. And I think because the way that playoff game went down, we're still kind of in that gray area. So it seems that they want him back. And I know Matt wants to stay there, but there is still a negotiation and a number to be hit. And if things start to feel unaligned in that, it could then reach a point where a change is being made. Matt LaFleur would obviously be highly sought after elsewhere, though a lot of those seats may end up getting filled. So if I'm Matt LaFleur, I want some clarity quickly as to where we each are on the numbers.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Silver. And what you brought up about Malik Willis, I think is something, if you talk to people around the league, it's, you want to see a sign of a good coach. It's usually when backups come in and they perform at a very high level. Coaching is a huge part of that because A, they're usually a backup for a reason, and you molded them to play in a better sense. I think Jesse Minter did that in week 18 with a bunch of backups against the Denver Broncos offense. Everybody's going, this scheme is pretty good. This guy can coach. Same thing with Matt LaFleur and what he's done with Malik Willis, where a lot of people I've talked to believe he's going to be like a $15, $18 million a year quarterback possibly next year. And that's because of Matt LaFleur. That's what he does with that position. And you're right, the negotiation side of things, I think that first offer that Ed Policy makes is going to be very telling. And you know the way things get around the league. I think other teams might know what that first offer was, and then they'll know if there's a realistic chance of this thing going sideways and what the Packers really think. I would throw and I don't know this is just me throwing everything against the wall. What if Ed Policy just loves Jeff Hafley and says, this is my number, but if you can't meet that number, we're cool making Jeff Hafley our next head coach and we'll find an offensive coordinator. I mean, that would be wild. I think the world of Matt LaFleur as a head coach, but I think that's why everybody's just looking and keeping an eye on what's happening there. Okay, we're going to have a ton more with Mike.
First of all, I would say that would be a violation of the Rooney Rule, so you could do that in spirit, but you couldn't do that in
You wouldn't
practice.
Just hire him the next day. Yeah. No.
But I know Jeff Hafley's getting a lot of attention, and that's cool. I think if you thought you could replicate Matt LaFleur's results with Jeff Hafley as a first-time NFL head coach, that would be very aspirational, but we'll see what happens.
I think you're right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe a team blows your doors off with some sort of offer. I don't know, in terms of trading for Matt, because they would have to, honestly. He's not going to be a free agent.
Not unless they agree to go their separate ways, because they're so far apart.
Yeah, they could part. Okay. All right. Great point. We got much more coming up with Mike Silver coming up. We got to talk about that shirt that he's wearing. We got to talk about what that meant to the 49ers and an unbelievable win that they had over the defending Super Bowl champs. More Scoop City coming up. Welcome back to Scoop City. It is a James Palmer, Mike Silver day. I love it. I didn't know you were going to wear that shirt, Silver, but I almost kind of predicted it in my head. I know what that band means to you. And I thought you brilliantly put it on The Athletic in your article about what it means to a lot of guys in that locker room as well. Before we get to the actual game, do you want just a moment to just let everybody know about like Bobby's connection to the 49ers and this whole thing that kind of, I bet you were sitting in that press box going, this could all come together for something pretty kind of special here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was heavier than that for me. I was born in San Francisco. I identify a lot with the city and with Northern California, where I've lived most of my adult life. Saw the Grateful Dead a lot, have seen Bobby Weir play live more than any musician, and have gotten to meet him and interview him, and it's been a wild ride. So that was a heavy night on Saturday when the news came out, and then on Sunday you have a football team representing that region that is trying to do something audacious, and to me, it was a legitimate through line, even if you take away those connections to some of the players, which I'll get to in a moment. But just the San Francisco thing, that city, and for those who read my story, I referenced the Barbary Coast and some other San Francisco things. But like really the foundation of that city, its evolution, its entire history has been this kind of audacious, outside the box, crafting and conjuring a new way of doing things that didn't exist before. Kind of defiance that has have run through all of San Francisco, certainly including the Grateful Dead and the counterculture movement and all of that endures. But the 49ers were kind of in that mode to me. They're a team that I just didn't think should really be there with losing Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, their top pick, Mikael Williams, all the injuries they had throughout the season. Trent Williams really not playing close to 100% at left tackle. And then George Kittle goes down wearing the Bob Weir tribute cleats, which I'll get to. And now Ricky Pearsall wasn't playing. Brandon Ayuk is AWOL all season. So you've got, cast off receivers, and Christian McCaffrey, thank heaven. And Kyle Juszczyk is now your essential number 2 receiving target, your fullback, and your halfback McCaffrey is WR1. And Kyle Shanahan pulls out a trick play that requires Juwan Jennings as he's about to be blasted so hard by Jalen Carter that he earns a roughing the passer call, which is wild for a receiver, but releases a dime 40 plus yards that Christian McCaffrey has to track in the wind with a safety coming not over his shoulder, over both shoulders, and dive and catch. And it was just such a magical, audacious, outside the box moment that to me, it all felt as one. And so, would I have forced Bob Weir into a Niners story the day after his passing? You bet you. Absolutely. But it didn't feel like I had to force it because those guys, McCaffrey, Kittle, Jake Tonjes, Kyle Juszczyk, and Bosa had gone to the Sphere in May and had a real good time in the tradition of that band and its culture, and gotten to know Bobby Weir a little bit. And George Kittle was wearing the messages on his cleats, and they all were a little bit, kind of sobered by that reality and knew what he meant to San Francisco, along with the larger world. And so it all did kind of come together. And I wish obviously I wasn't writing under those circumstances, because I wanted to go see as many more Wolf Brothers shows and Dead and Company shows as I could. But, the last part of this, in 1999, I did a cover story for Sports Illustrated on sports, hip hop, and rock and roll. And I got to go have dinner at Bobby's house with him, his wife, Natasha, and their then newborn daughter, Monet, in 1999. And we talked a lot about sports and the connections. And one of the things we talked about was the way that band loved the 49ers. And Bobby said, he said, we're all pathological 49er fans. And he talked about wanting to get Steve Young to come play in his flag football league in Mill Valley on the weekends. He talked about wanting to tell Steve that yoga would be a good way to help him with his back issues. He talked about long set breaks, and deadheads know the set breaks were long anyway, but like long breaks between that first and second set that on shows that coincided with big 49er games during the, Walsh, Montana, Young heyday, where if the Niners were in a big playoff game and the first set ended, they were going to stay and watch and find out what happened before they came back for the second set. So I just know that, Bobby loved that team and loved those moments that Montana used to do. And this was, I've been following that team since I was a kid and covered them since 1989. Beating the defending champs in that context, under those circumstances is etched in the annals of the epic Niner triumphs.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody go read that article. It might take you a minute because there's a lot of YouTube links you can just click on and then enjoy the tunes. And I love that you put those in the article, Silver. I thought that was outstanding. And Juwan Jennings, 1 for 1 on throws over 15 yards. Jalen Hurts, 0 for 5 on throws over 15 yards in that game.
I think James, late at night after filing, my close friend Vic Tafer, who is one of our Niner beat writers,
he's been on the show a bunch. Yeah, we love him.
We went to college with. We ordered some late dinner, and we kind of are exhaling, and he asked me what I wrote, and I told him, and I said, "What did you write?" And he just said, I wrote that Brock Purdy, he said, I wrote that the 49ers had the two best quarterbacks on the field. I was like, ooh.
Oh, man. Well, let's go there for a second because you know this Eagles team well. You've been around them a bunch on Super Bowl run last year and over the years, and we all kind of know the type of player that Jalen Hurts is. They make a change over at offensive coordinator. I find it very fascinating that I've talked to some people in the building, outside the building, that there's like a variety of opinions on the appeal of this offensive coordinator job. I don't know if everybody that from the outside thinks would be interested in this is interested in this job. And it's very specific in the way that this offense essentially kind of has to be run when I talk to people that know offensive football much better than I do. And that's offensive coordinators around the league. Where do you think Philly is specifically on that side of the ball? Is this a team we should be watching this offseason in terms of getting themselves where they need to be, because the talent is still there, but there's a lot of moving parts that are going on there in Philadelphia?
Well, they have some decisions to make. I do not believe this is as simple as plugging in a new coordinator.
Agreed.
Now, they did that after Brian Johnson with Kellen Moore and won a Super Bowl resoundingly. So I understand why they would think that. And obviously, when Shane Steichen was there, it looked a lot better. But they've now had twice with Brian Johnson and Kevin Patullo where it hasn't. And I'm not positive how much of that is on the coordinator. There seems to be a disconnect with the quarterback. So let me take a step back. As epic as that was for the 49ers, it was an abject failure for the defending champs. The bottom line is, that strength against strength, Kyle Shanahan's offense, depleted as it was against Vic Fangio's defense, and you saw the two Quinyon Mitchell interceptions. That made sense to me. Weakness against weakness, because the 49ers defense, without those guys and with all those young players and, a linebacker probably most of you have never heard of.
Fifth, sixth, and seventh linebackers, essentially.
Named Wallow playing, and another one who just came back off the street, Eric Kendricks, who's had a nice career. But they had the ball down 4 with a chance to win it, got to the 20-yard line and couldn't do it. And that's a massive failure. This is a team that had Saquon Barkley running well, no Lane Johnson, but still a really talented offensive line. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, maybe the best receiving tandem in terms of talent on paper in the league, are certainly right up there.
Yep, they're in the conversation.
And Jalen Hurts, who twice in the Super Bowl has been amazing, but obviously that's a whole other topic. But they were not able to get that done, and that reflected how their season is gone. It wasn't like, wow, the offense looked so good all season and then it failed. It looked like it looked all season in those moments. And I talked to 49er coaches and players. They didn't do anything exotic in those last moments. They played what is essentially quarters coverage, 4 DBs across. They call it M-check. Didn't vary it. They haven't had a pass rush all season since Bosa went down.
Well, they have less than 20 sacks, Silver, or something for the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And yet they still were able to not only keep them out of the end zone, but they had him throwing into, triple, quadruple coverage those last 2 plays. And so if you're the Eagles, you have to ask yourself, is this just a matter of getting a better coordinator? Or is this a matter of rethinking what we have in Jalen Hurts? Would they draft another quarterback? Would they do to Jalen Hurts what they once did with Jalen Hurts to Carson Wentz and bring in potential heir apparent? Would they bring in competition? Are they going to trade A.J. Brown? In fairness to A.J. Brown, my pitch to them would be like, why are you paying me this much and not using me the way that I could be used? They're also paying Devontae Smith. So Howie Roseman's really good at this. The owner, Jeffrey Lurie, is the best owner in football, one of the best owners in sports. They're really, really good at figuring this stuff out. But I'm just a little suspicious of the notion that, hey, if we just change coordinators, we're good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more moving parts. Does Lane Johnson return or does he retire? Like that's a linchpin to your offensive line that you've had for 14 years, I think it was. And they've been starving, and that's my hometown, for a wide receiver forever. They make them huge trade for A.J. Brown. He has over 1,000 yards for each of the last 4 seasons. There's only 5 guys that have done that over the last 4 seasons. It's him, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Justin Jefferson. He's in rare company. And just now we're having conversations of they gotta trade him. There's a lot that you gotta figure out in Philadelphia, and I think they are going to see, because they do believe at times that this is Nick Sirianni's best trait, which is managing a room and managing people. Sometimes he's great at it. Sometimes there's other, arguments that transpire, but I think that's why he's in the role he's in and has, can't argue, a lot of success, Silver, like a lot of success.
I think Nick does some really, really, really important things in that building that a lot of other coaches who are good might not be able to navigate. So if you ask me, when it comes to scheme and play calling, is Nick in the upper half of the offensive head coaches in the league? I would say most people would say no. If you ask me in the things you said, managing, navigating a building with a very powerful GM, a very, strong and involved owner, headstrong players, and incredibly high standards from a fan base that really cares in a big media market. Nick Sirianni is elite, and I don't want to shortchange him. And there are other things he does too that are really good. But I've come a long way. I kind of have wanted to roll my eyes at him a lot when he's yelling at opposing fans or getting into it with Zach Ertz on the field or showing his emotion, or the Greenlaw Big Dom interaction, which came from Nick getting up in Greenlaw's face. Yeah. But I've kind of come to see a lot of the brilliance of Nick too, and how he does some of those things you said. So it's not an easy building to navigate all that and to be the head coach in, but I could see why a lot of people would want to try, because you have such a great owner and such an aggressive GM that to me it's worth it.
Yeah, I'll say one small story. I talked to a lot of coaches in that building about the Super Bowl year, and you had 2 really good coordinators, right? And Kellen Moore, and we know how good Vic Fangio is. You and I both know him. Yeah. And what he did was he would let them coach, but also meet with them and meet with their staff. Probably, who do I need to push this week? Who do you need to make sure takes their game to another level this week? And then when that message comes from the head coach, during stretching, hey, we need you for this. We need you to do this. It carries more weight sometimes, right, from the head coach. And so that communication with these coordinators, to trust them what they wanted to call and wanted to do, but then kind of push their message the right way throughout the week, a big feather in the cap of the way Nick Sirianni works. All right, we got one more block coming up here on Scoop City. I got to ask Silver about his recent article about Tom Brady and the Raiders. That's coming up next on Scoop City. All right, closing things out on a Wednesday with my good buddy Mike Silver. We'll be hanging out this weekend, divisional round here in Denver. Him and I will be taking in that game together between the Bills and the Broncos. But you wrote an article recently about another AFC West team, and that was the Las Vegas Raiders and what they're going to do moving forward with their head coaching search, with their minority owner, who's the greatest player in a lot of people's minds in the history of this league, and Tom Brady, and the greatest winner, obviously. What did you learn when you put that together? Because I know it took some time for you, Silver, to work on that too. What do we expect from Tom? And what did you learn kind of putting that together, going, this could go in this direction, or we expect him to do blank, blank, and blank?
Yeah, I mean, James, honestly, ever since he took over, and I kind of knew how much influence he had in that building, starting out, with the firings of Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, and the coaching search and the quarterback search, which ended up being a trade for Geno Smith, and all through the season, I've understood how much influence he has. And this guy's not only the greatest winner that we've seen, but to me, one of the most ruthless, relentless competitors, which I've loved about him, and I've covered so many maniacally competitive, psychos, and I say that lovingly, but, from Michael Jordan, Jerry Rice, so many. And Brady to me is just a level of insanity that way. So part of me thinks like, dude, I want to see you jump in and just go for it and be that guy, because you obviously have that, and that could permeate throughout a building and a culture. But Tom's style has been more to remain in the shadows. And in fairness, it's easy for me to say jump in, but I'm not getting paid $37.5 million a year. $37.5 million a year.
Come on, The Athletic. Let's go. New York Times. Let's get it together.
And he does have, children and who are living in Florida and the East Coast. So it's easy for me to say, just go to Vegas, get in the building and do it. But that's kind of what I would hope for the Raiders. Because I juxtaposed it with Peyton, obviously Tom's greatest rival as a player, because Peyton's style is so different, and Peyton hasn't jumped in and gone that route. But if Peyton Manning got an ownership stake in a team and the owner was like, Peyton, lead us, how that would go. He'd be like, okay. I'm Peyton Manning. I'm now in charge. I've decided to fire Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco. I will be leading the search. And he would it would be like Peyton at the line of scrimmage,
full control.
I am in charge. So to me, it's not just a practical concern, because Tom could do a lot of big decisions behind the scenes, but I kind of like that messaging in the building and out that, you are in. And so I'm not so concerned with it's a conflict of interest. He's announcing, he's doing production meetings and calling games with the Chiefs. I know that's tricky and messy and annoying, but whatever, dude, it's Tom Brady. I'm not mad at him for that, and mildly annoyed that the league is kind of throwing up their hands, but it's not a concern for me. But I would like to see, because, I was told they didn't sign Sam Darnold because Tom didn't think that was the way they should go, for example. And I would just love Tom to be up there telling people publicly a little bit hey, this is my thought. And also telling people in that building, this is what we're trying to do. Because when I ask people who are high up in that organization and have important jobs, hey, the decision to shut down Max Crosby, who made that call? And they hem and haw and don't know right away. That to me is a sign that I'd like to see it be a little more obvious if it is Tom. And if it's not Tom, that's fine too. Just make it obvious.
Yeah, that's a great point. I put this point down when I retweeted that article. What I'm looking for, and you kind of mentioned it with the Sam Darnold aspect, is there's so many comparisons to what John Elway has done as an executive, and he was very good at it. And his best trait was probably luring free agents to come to Denver, Peyton Manning being the top of the list. But the list went on with DeMarcus Ware and Emmanuel Sanders and I think TJ Ward and Keith Talib and all these guys. That was his great ability in the free agent world. But the thing that he always struggled with was evaluating quarterback talent. And I'm kind of fascinated to see if that's something that Tom can be really good at. Some people in sports that I've talked to have told me, if you can do it at a level that very few people, maybe count on 1 to 2 hands, have been able to do it at that level, it's hard to evaluate other people doing it because you just don't get why they can't do it. Like John, why can't you just throw it like this? It's so easy to him. He could do it. It's an interesting evaluation with these quarterbacks, and I'm kind of curious how Brady's going to compare to John, who never really could find in the draft that quarterback. He famously did not even go and attend Josh Allen's pro day up the road in Wyoming, just 130 miles north of Denver.
Well, apparently Tom Brady's eval on Sam Darnold might not age well, for example. But again, he's so... listen, when I think of John Elway, I think of quarterbacks. What I think about is he made one quarterback decision that changed their world, and that was Tim Tebow just won a playoff game for us. He's a cult hero. Nobody understands quite how this is happening, and he's young and under contract, and maybe we can get him more accurate and have him grow into this. And he went and said, no, I don't want that. I want Peyton Manning coming off 4 neck surgeries, who may never be able to get back to what he was. But if he can, it's Peyton Manning. And I've always believed in my heart, and from talking to Peyton and talking to John, that when those two got in the room and had that conversation, we talked about the conversation for greatest quarterback of all time. Mm-hmm. There are at most 8 to 10 humans who've ever lived who could look each other in the eye and really communicate on that level. Yeah. And those were two of them. And so whatever that conversation was, Peyton was like, I'm going there. And John was like, I want you. And it happened, and they had great success, won a Super Bowl, even after Peyton, really lost his fastball. And so to me, it's bigger than who you're going to draft or, who's the offensive coordinator going to be. It's the big moments and who you are and how you carry yourself and what the standard is and what you understand about competition. Doesn't mean it's going to work. We've seen great players in other sports and in football not have great success in those roles, but we've also seen Ozzie Newsome, or Larry Bird, and it's like, oh yeah. So I would just like, the Raiders have been so bad for so long, I would like to see if we can try. And it's easy for me to say, and I told Tom it's easy for me to tell you what to do, but selfishly, because I do feel for those Raider fans, I would love to see Brady just be the guy who, one time when I showed up at a training camp practice, had called his offensive linemen cows in the huddle because they weren't getting out on the sweep fast enough. And, it wasn't always chummy, but man, that guy knew how to prod people to be great.
Yeah, I think that's why we all want to see him go out and do it. Like there's very few people on this planet you sometimes, and maybe wrongfully so, just expect greatness because that's what he's done with his track record. And
I feel like we've come full circle because the Grateful Dead were those people, among others, for me. So I just want to. Take this moment to remember the greatness of Bobby Weir and, of course, the legacy of the Grateful Dead. Jerry Garcia has been gone 30 plus years now. Nuts. The music will never stop. We don't want it to, but for many of us, the ride is kind of now really over. And, it's a heavy time, but we have the songs, and we will. And because the Grateful Dead were such visionaries, we have the tapes. We have every show, so it will never die.
Awesome, you're the best. I'll see you this weekend. I'm looking forward to hanging out, man. Appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, man. I'll see you very soon.
Thanks for watching Scoop City. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment. New episodes of Scoop City drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.